His mother actually considered abortion before he was even born. And his father? He passed away from alcoholism when Ronaldo was just 20 years old. Okay, let's dive right into this explainer because this is definitely not your typical story of a child prodigy who was just destined for greatness from day one. Today we are decoding the life of Cristiano Ronaldo dos Santos Aveiro. This is a deeply serious, deeply human documentary-style look at a boy nobody wanted who ultimately conquered the world. It's a story about what happens when a human being completely and absolutely refuses to accept the life the world has planned for them.
To really understand the man, we've got to go back to the very beginning. Born on February 5, 1985, in Funchal, which is on the small Portuguese island of Madeira. Picture this, 6 family members sharing a tiny tin-roofed house clinging to a steep hillside. There were no natural advantages here, no safety net, no connections. His mother Dolores worked as a cook and a cleaner, and his father Denise, who actually named him after the U.S. president at the time, Ronald Reagan, battled severe alcoholism. The extreme poverty of his childhood was an absolute crucible. The family's financial difficulties were so severe that, as we mentioned right at the start, his mother almost made a choice that would have literally erased football history as we know it, but she didn't.
Chapter 1. The Boy Nobody Wanted.
So from the second he could walk, he was out there kicking a ball in the narrow, wind-swept streets of Madeira. And he wasn't just playful, he was fiercely, almost impossibly driven. We're talking about a hyper-competitive kid who would literally cry when his teammates missed goals. He just possessed this hunger that was basically impossible to satisfy. In 1993, at just 8 years old, he joined Andorinha, a local amateur club. Now, his father, Denise, worked as a part-time kitman for this club. So, the exact same man who struggled so much with alcoholism, who couldn't always provide a stable financial net for the family, actually gave his son his very first real connection to organized football. His father's workplace became his football school. By age 10, he was already a local star, catching the eye of bigger clubs on the island, and eventually, the mainland came calling.
Chapter 2. Alone in Lisbon. Fast forward to 1997. After a highly successful trial, he signs with Sporting CP, which was one of the absolute biggest clubs in all of Portugal. He was 12 years old. Just think about that for a second. 12 years old, leaving the tiny island of Madeira, leaving his family, leaving literally everything he had ever known to step onto the biggest stage he'd ever seen. You hear 12-year-old signs with a massive club and it sounds like a fairy tale, right? But the reality was entirely brutal. He was severely homesick. He had no family anywhere nearby. He was mercilessly mocked by the other kids in the academy for his thick Madeiran accent. He cried, just from the sheer loneliness of it all, and even considered giving up entirely. Most kids would have just packed their bags and gone home. But Ronaldo? He took all of those tears, all of that mockery, and he turned it into fuel. He started training longer and harder than anyone else.
But then, in the year 2000, an even bigger hurdle pops up, a terrifying medical crisis. At just 15 years old, doctors diagnosed him with a racing heart condition. This was something that threatened to end his entire career before he had even made a single professional appearance. Surgery was absolutely required. Thankfully, it was a success. But the crucial point for us is what happened next. Most people would take weeks, maybe months to recover. Ronaldo, driven by pure obsession, was back out on the training pitch just days after leaving the hospital. He flat out refused to let his own body stop his stream.
Chapter 3. Becoming a Machine.
By 16, he makes his senior debut for Sporting CP, and shortly after, in a preseason friendly, this wiry teenager completely dismantles Manchester United's first team. He played so incredibly well that the veteran United players were practically demanding their legendary manager, Sir Alex Ferguson, sign the kid right then and there. And in 2003, it happened. That's the year he arrived at Manchester United. Under the strict, brilliant guidance of Sir Alex Ferguson, the boy from Madeira was about to transform from this raw, flashy talent into an unstoppable machine.
So how exactly did he become a machine? Look, these aren't just myths invented years later to sound good. These are heavily documented stories from his own United teammates. He would tie weights to his ankles for night training just to build his explosive speed. He practiced dribbling alone in the pitch dark. Teammates would arrive for their standard morning sessions, only to find Ronaldo already dripping with sweat from a solo workout he'd started an hour earlier. The kid who was once mocked for his island accent was now outworking players who had grown up with every advantage in the world.
Chapter 4. Dominance and Disappointment.
All of that obsessive training? Yeah, it paid off in a massive way. By 2008, he had captured his first Champions League title and his very first Ballon d'Or. He was sitting on top of the world in England. But then, the absolute grandest stage in world football came calling. In 2009, Ronaldo transferred to Real Madrid for a then world record fee of £80 million. When he was presented, 80,000 fans packed into the Santiago Bernabéu stadium. And they didn't come to watch a match. They came just to watch him walk out onto the pitch, to witness his arrival. That staggering global magnitude really tells you everything you need to know about the icon he had become.
His time at Real Madrid honestly defies statistical logic. 351 goals in just 438 appearances. 4 Champions League titles. 4 more Ballon d'Or awards during his time at the club, bringing his career total to 5 Ballon d'Ors and ultimately well over 900 career goals. This was quite simply the most statistically dominant run by a player at a single club in history. And of course, a huge part of this era was his legendary rivalry with Lionel Messi. It's the greatest parallel career dynamic in sports history. 2 men constantly pushing each other to heights they honestly might never have reached alone.
But, despite the broken records, despite the mountain of trophies, there was a shadow, and it's represented by the number 6. That's the 6 World Cups that Cristiano Ronaldo played in. For all his club dominance, for all his unbelievable goal-scoring records, the World Cup remained the one ultimate prize, the one towering mountain that the greatest goal scorer in history just never managed to conquer.
And that chase finally culminated here, 2026, his 6th and final tournament. Portugal was eliminated by Spain in the round of 16. You have to remember, Portugal is a relatively small nation. They never really possessed the deep historical resources of a Brazil or an Argentina to surround Ronaldo with a consistently dominant squad. So after 5 previous disappointments, this 2026 exit finally brought an end to his international dreams. And honestly, it's a profoundly humanizing end to a career that otherwise looked like science fiction.
Chapter 5. The Meaning of Ronaldo.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to look past the 900 goals. Look past the 5 Ballon d'Ors. Look past the fact that he's the world's most followed human being and football's very first billionaire. What does the boy born into poverty on a tiny island truly represent? Think about it this way. Lionel Messi was born with a gift so extraordinary it almost seems supernatural. But Cristiano Ronaldo, he was born with a hunger so extraordinary that it achieved the exact same result through sheer force of will. He took every insult, every homesick tear as a 12-year-old, every beep of a heart monitor at 15, and every single doubt thrown his way, and he forged it into the motivation needed to equal a supernatural talent. He is a human being who simply refused to accept the life that had been written for him.
It makes you wonder, in our modern era of hyper-optimized academies and instant gratification, will we ever see a player forged in this kind of fire again? Because the truth of his legacy is exactly this. Some players have talent, some players have hunger. Cristiano Ronaldo had both, and the world will not see his like again.